Hi everyone, it's Karen from Wise Transition, and I have a special guest today, Marcelle Allen. And the reason that Marcelle is joining me is that on November 3rd, I am doing a workshop about your subpersonality called All the Voices in Your Head. And Marcelle and I were talking the other day, and she kind of talked a little bit, and then I was like, well, that sounds like a subpersonality.
I have several, apparently.
We all have a lot, right? One of the practices that we like to do is called Who's on the Bus?
Oh.
And we draw a bus, and then we have all of these subpersonalities, but we found 3 the other day.
Yeah, so one of my nicknames is Hallmark, which I embrace that, and I'm very proud of that nickname, right? Because it's adorable, and it was given to me by somebody great, and it's very positive, and I love to cheer people up, and I'm very grateful, and all that warm, fuzzy, cozy stuff. But then the other day, we were talking about marketing this event, and you said something about, do you ever say something that you don't mean to say, and you're like, where'd that come from? And then, the next day, I became like Gollum. I was like, oh, you little thing, I'm going to kill you! This other personality came out, and I was just really, really, really mean to someone I care about, and I was like, I'm sorry.
And honestly, none of us can believe that because you are mostly Hallmark.
I'm mostly Hallmark,
yeah.
But Gollum sneaks in sometimes. And then there's the author, which is me trying to share a message and trying to be excited about something important, and that takes a lot of courage, but sometimes the author doesn't actually want to sell the books. She just wants to write this story and craft and perfect and entertain, and you don't actually want to sell. So there's all these things going on. I'm like, Karen, tell me more. What do we do with this? How do we make sense of it?
Well, I think one thing that you have just alluded to, which is so true, is we all have all of these voices in our head, right? There's all of these thoughts that go round and round, and that's totally normal. And the other part that's totally normal is to have subpersonalities. Everybody has them. You can sometimes call them roles. You have a subpersonality for when you're at work, your business one.
Sure.
You have one if you're a mom, and if you're a spouse or a girlfriend. You have your daughter subpersonality. If you think about how you act when you're with your parents as opposed to how you act when you're at work.
Yeah,
it's
totally different.
Very different. You're a different person then.
And when I'm Auntie M, I get down on my hands and knees and I go full on, dinosaur or Lego building, and I just become Auntie M. And there's no judgment. There's none of my Barbie coming out where I care about how I look. I just want to have fun.
Well, that's another good
I got
point.
Up to 5 now.
Yeah, that's another good point. Subpersonalities are not bad. Okay, all of them serve a purpose. They were developed for a purpose, and they have strengths and they have weaknesses. So the only time when they become a problem is when they limit you in some way from doing something that you want and need to do in your life. So if you have a subpersonality that developed because of something that wasn't that great when you were a child, and that fear is triggered, then that subpersonality is just going to come roaring in, and it feels like you're taken over by another personality because you are.
And that's what I felt when you said that. I was like, yeah, I literally became someone who I never want to be, but it just snuck out. I'm like, why the heck does this happen to us? How do I make it go away?
Yeah. And the thing that also is really interesting about that is that we normally recognize them. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen this one before. I don't like when I'm like that, and I don't want to be like that. And you recognize them. You have seen them and dealt with them and had the consequences of them many times before. But the really great news,
there's good news?
There is good news.
Good, let's talk about this.
Is that there is something you can do about it. And what we want to do is make this subpersonality be your ally.
Oh, so Gollum and I can be buds?
You sure can. Because the thing to remember is that Gollum was formed for a very important reason, and that was to take care of you. And so what you need to find out are what are Gollum's strengths right? Because all subpersonalities have strengths and weaknesses,
Sure.
right? So if you were just to think about Gollum for a second, what are a strength that you have then?
Speedy. He was very quick, quick to think, and maybe very honest. Whereas Hallmark's kind of light and fluffy and super sweet and almost too sugary. I think Gollum is probably more honest and real and raw. That might be a benefit.
Gollum gets things done.
Gollum's very efficient.
Make sure that things get done.
High expectations, strangely, but critical in a sense that it was not the right type of criticism, but it was a critical in the sense that there was a standard there that he was going for, that I was going for, and maybe the expression of the request just wasn't sugary sweet.
Right,
you know?
right. But sometimes that's needed, right? There's sometimes, like if you were in an emergency situation, you know, you would want to be able to access that aspect, that strength of Gollum, and use it to get things done in a quick and efficient way. So what is great is that when you get to know your subpersonality, and you know the strength and you know the weakness, you begin to be able to access that when you need it and when you can use it. So that's the first piece of good news.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And the second thing is that once you really realize that strength, you start to appreciate your subpersonality. So they're not like your enemy. They're not.
So I can send a greeting card to Gollum.
You can, yeah.
Like,
because, they start to come closer together when Gollum thinks, well, Hallmark really does appreciate me and sends me Christmas cards. Then they stop being so defensive. Yeah. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing then is you start to have a conversation because they are being heard, right? Yeah. You're hearing that part of yourself. And this is where it gets a little more touchy-feely. But the next question is, what are you afraid of?
Yeah, there's all this fear that comes out. You're like, wow, I didn't realize I was so scared.
Yeah, exactly. And they're never heard. And when fear isn't heard, it gets bigger, right? And it comes out like, whoa, you know? So hearing the fear is a big step for this subpersonality, just to know that it's heard. And then what really seals the ally relationship is to find out, what do they need to feel safe? So in this situation, it would be, okay, you're afraid of this not getting done. What do you need in order to feel safe? Like, how quickly do you need to be done? Or what's going to happen if it's not done? And you start to listen and have a conversation.
Well, and isn't that what we were talking about the other day? I was so like, get this done, like bitter, just critical. And then I haven't even done the thing I'm supposed to do with the thing now that I got it. And that's my author side coming out. I was like, I just want to express, but I'm nervous.
Yeah.
You know, which is like a whole other layer. Not just the critical and the high standards, but the, what if people don't like this?
What if people, There's
so a whole lot of fear in that.
That fear is so, I mean, it's so like heart deep, you know, like I'm putting my creative child out into the world. And the last thing that I want is for somebody to say, I don't like your baby. You know, that doesn't go well. Yeah. Right? And so it's like, okay, what do I need to do for me to feel safe? And we talked about
that. Not even my frame of reference.
Well, we talked a little bit about the fact that in that particular situation, you were looking for everyone else to make you feel good about what you've done, and you have no control over anybody else, right?
Guess not.
You know, darn it, yeah. There could be another subpersonality there who wants to control everybody. But what you can start to do is to give things to yourself. Like, what is it you can do for yourself to know that you've done a fabulous job at this? There's things called affirmations. Affirmations.
I finished something. Actually, Tracy and I were joking with that. I finished something. I did it. I did a thing.
And that is amazing. That is so amazing. And so where's the celebration for that? I set a goal. I followed through. I did it. Great job, Marcelle. And so start every day and set your timer on your clock so that you're telling yourself that every hour on the day when you're putting your book out there and you're really scared. Yeah.
So I know we've got an event coming up on November 3rd, which is actually my sister's birthday, and I'm hoping she can join us. But what are we going to do at this workshop that once we realize, okay, there's Hallmark and Gollum and maybe 15 other things that we have set up, what are we going to do at this workshop that you've designed just for people like me who are like, oh wow.
Well, the first thing that we're going to be doing is something like what we're doing today is first off learning about subpersonalities. I mean, we've barely touched the surface about them, but we've touched on the most important thing, which is you can make them an ally. Everybody has them, and they all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
Okay? So we're going to be learning about subpersonalities, and then we're going to do the bus. Who's on your bus?
Ooh, okay.
Who is on your bus? And I use a lot of creative expression in learning and in experiencing, because when we get out of our right brain, linear, logical person, and we get into that right brain.
The other side, right?
Yeah.
Brain. Yep.
The other side.
The other side.
The creative.
emotional side.
The stuff that's not logical. We stop thinking in the box, right? And we start moving into, what does the emotion say? What else can happen? What happens if we don't tell ourselves we should do this? We should do that. That's what happens when we get into our creative side.
That's exciting.
So we're going to start with creating our own bus.
Do we do the bus? Are we doing a thing?
Yeah. So after we do the bus, then we're going to choose one subpersonality that is limiting us in some way. Okay.
Pick one.
Everybody gets to pick one. Yeah. And you have a whole bus to choose from. So you can choose as scary or as friendly of a subpersonality as you want. And then we're going to start creating it, making a visual representation of this. Because a lot of times it helps to have something that you can see when you're talking to this,
to anger this character.
Yeah. And it allows you to say, oh, there's that subpersonality. Let's talk to each other. Even if it's in your head, you have that visual image of what the subpersonality looks like.
Do we get to keep this thing we create?
Oh, you take it with you. You bet. And there's a lot of different mediums that you're going to have. You get to choose whatever kind of feels best for you. We have wire sculpture and pipe cleaner sculpture, and we have different ways that you can use alcohol inks, and that you can use oil pastels and all sorts of different things, so that you, if we have time, can do a couple of different subpersonalities or explore one subpersonality in different ways. So
tell us, if you will, are you going to create a really safe place? Because this is scary. Even me right now on this live video, I'm like, I'm scared to say this. But how are you going to make us feel safe and supported? Is that going to be a big part? I mean, that's who you are, but is that... No,
it's a really good point. And I do want to just take this chance to say thank you, Marcelle, because this is a scary thing. Talking about the subpersonality and the fears that they have, these are ones that, they're triggers for us, right? And so putting it out for the world to hear and see. Yeah.
I don't want to hear your jokes.
Thank you, Marcelle. Really, thank you so much. But creating safe space is absolutely what it's all about. So there is no requirement that you share anything. There's no requirement that you show anything. And one of the first things that I always start with when we're doing creative expression is exploring your inner critic, which is a subpersonality that we all have, right? So we give visual definition to that. Maybe we use ink blot monsters. Yeah, those are a lot of fun. So that we can invite the inner critic to take a vacation while we're exploring. And that helps us to then open up to being able to try new things without worrying about what it looks like. Because creative expression in this context is about the process and not the product. Okay?
So we don't have to make a beautiful statue. We can
No, if you saw mine, you would know the truth of that.
All right.
This is not about creating something beautiful, but if you do, lucky you, you know, how great. But it really is about what you learn and hear about yourself as you're going through this process.
And then if there's someone out there that's like, I don't know if I should go there, are you willing to do a quick free phone call to make sure it's a good fit?
Absolutely.
To answer that question? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So where can they find out more to do that?
So you can email me at Karen@wisetransition.com or just drop a messenger on Facebook and I respond that way also. So just drop me an email. We'll set up a time where we can talk.
Yeah, so if you're on the fence, call her, talk to her, have that time, because I didn't even realize how much of my own stuff was like every day. Like it's not just a one time, it's like a part of who I am. And I want to understand that, and I want that for you too. So thank you so much, Karen, for doing a cool workshop for this. And I'm excited to make my little creature, and hopefully we'll have some friends join us.
Yeah, I will put, in order to help you to feel less self-conscious about what you're creating, I'll put mine up on Facebook.
Well, that'll be good.
And you'll go, okay, all bets are off.
Yeah, awesome.
we have no high standards here.
We're having fun, learning the process. It's awesome.
It's fun.
Well, cool. Well, drop us any questions if you have them below, and hopefully we'll see you at the workshop.
Yeah, and thanks again, Marcelle.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Call
for
me.
helping me. Yeah, I call her.
Bye.